Hi everyone, it's me again. In the last episode, I calculated the odds of a no-hit True Pacifist run in Undertale, which I will link in the cards above. However, I also mentioned at the end of that video that there's another run out there that is so prestigious, so difficult, so tedious, so absolutely everything, that it may become the best candidate for hardest base game Undertale Deltarune challenge that is realistically achievable. Spoiler alert, it's far more likely than no-hit True Pacifist ever will be. No, it's not about missing every achievement. That's been done before, and it's not even close to what we're about to discuss today. We are talking about a full no-hit run of Deltarune, chapters 1 through 4, back to back. To summarise Deltarune challenge running and how we even got to this point, we need to go over some history. The earliest recorded no-hit run of the original Chapter 1 demo was done by Just a Normal Bear in November 2018, less than a month after the game was released. As the name suggests, it goes through the entire chapter without taking a single hit, including Jevil, which isn't even a mandatory encounter. The guts to do a run like this so early on? How brave. Over the years, more Chapter 1 no-hit runs would enter the fray, but when Chapter 2 came out in 2021 and the challenge community got bigger and better, we knew that it was going to be fun. The first ever no-hit runs performed on Chapter 2 main route, all bosses and Snowgrave were all done by a notable figure in the Undertale Deltarune challenge community, Gon UT. I hope you remember him because he will be present a lot in this video. Shortly after all three of these routes were done, Gon UT would go on to be the first person to do Chapter 1 and 2 back-to-back no-hit on all bosses. All of this happened within 1 month of Chapter 2's release. But there were two more categories, all recruits, and one that at the time was simply unspoken of. First, let's look at all recruits. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Gon UT would also be the first person to no-hit this route as well in February of 2022. Quite the gap, isn't it? Well, that's because no-hitting Chapter 2 is hard. Whether you do main route, Snowgrave, all bosses, all recruits, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of choke points in it, and there's only 2 choke points in Chapter 1. Chapter 1 had the castle chase sequence where you can get hit at the very end of the room. I'm still salty about that. And Jevil. That's it. But Chapter 2 had multiple, and it would change depending on what route was done. In main route, there is Birdly, Spamton, Birdly again, Rules, Queen, and Giga Queen. Neither of the last two are exactly problematic per se, but considering it takes 10 minutes to reach the first Birdly encounter with optimal strategies, this was just a major inconvenience at best, but at worst, a sign of things to come. However, things have changed since then. Birdly 2 is no longer a problematic encounter due to aborted Snowgrave, Rules is made a joke with the machine we make in Chapter 1, Queen has an optimal strat to skip final attack, and Giga Queen has this. The hitboxes of Giga Queen's final attack are really weird. If you do turbo dodge, you can clip through every single falling Giga Queen. I have no idea how this works, but if you do, please leave a comment and I'll be sure to have a look at it. So this gets rid of quite a bit of evil RNG in the run. But what about all bosses? Well, there's the teacup ride, which isn't exactly random, but is already a very chokeable part due to its speed and complexity. And then there's Spamton Neo. You also fight Spamton Neo in Snowgrave as well, but either way he's an obstacle, so yeah. What makes Spamton Neo so difficult? Well, he's an optional boss for one thing, so he doesn't really matter if you do main route, but also because he's not actually that hard. Sure, some attacks can be problematic for some people, and I don't like it when others say this, but if you're having trouble with Spamton Neo, get good. Snowgrave has you going against every enemy, and some combinations, like the Vira Virakun and Ambulance, can be pretty nasty. Now it's time to talk about another strategy: no fresh saves. Since Chapter 2 can be started with any equipment from Chapter 1, we can just get a save file with what we need from Chapter 1 and try it out in Chapter 2. Of course, this is banned in speedrunning, but in challenge running, it's fair game. Using the Devil's Tail and Iron Shackle, a lot of these encounters can simply be made trivial. But regardless of how you get through it, there's Mansion to deal with, and oh boy, it's a doozy. This is what us challenge runners call the Hallway of 87, and it only appears in the Snowgrave route. Not only do you have to be fast, but you also have to watch out for the random Spanton heads that try to hit you. And even if you're not touching the head, you can still get hit by it. However, once the Hallway of 87 is cleared, it's a pretty easy finish. All recruits, on the other hand? The reason why it takes so long is because we can't attack any of the monsters to death. Even Birdly 2 cannot be messed with, and he's by far the hardest encounter. His papers are more dense, making it harder to read and react to. The combinations with him and the Werewire is sure to end your run. Oh yeah, and there's this guy. If you actually die to this enemy, then don't feel bad because the attacks it has are terrible. Ugh! And that's all recruits in a nutshell. Just a true pacifist 100% route in Chapter 2. And now, we talk about one of the previous hardest Undertale Deltarune runs that has ever been performed, TRACABARTPEEG. If you don't know what this name means, it stands for True Reset, All Chapters, All Bosses, All Recruits, True Pacifist Ending, Extended, Glitchless. It previously existed as a speedrun category as a joke, but as expected, Gon UT would be the very person to try and no-hit that. Let's break down the run in question. True Reset. This is an optional requirement. You don't have to do it, as it adds like 7 to 8 minutes in an already lengthy run, so hardly anyone does it. All Chapters. You had to do Chapter 1 and 2 in one run. All Bosses. You had to go against Jevil and fight Spanton Neo twice. There's no getting around it. All Recruits. You can't beat any of the enemies to death. Also, you have to get Starwalker in Chapter 1. Why is this a thing? Is he even that point? Ah! True Pacifist Ending. You have to get True Pacifist Ending. That's literally all it is. Extended. You have to do Snowgrave at some point. You can do this before or after the main route. It doesn't matter as long as you do it. Glitchless? I think this name speaks for itself. TRACABARTPEEG was really nothing to contest unless you had the nerve to keep going. You will fail a lot in this run. It's ranked as champion in the UDCC Discord server. It's longer than Undertale's True Pacifist run is, but it's a lot more skill based and not nearly as luck dependent. That doesn't mean that there isn't any luck required though. You'll still have to go against it. In September 2022, once again, Gon UT would be the first person to do this. This run is so unbelievably good that it even tops No Hit Neutral in terms of difficulty and how impressive it is. Over the following years, more Chapter 1 and 2 no-hit runs would surface, and it wouldn't be until 2024 when TRACABARTPEEG would see another victor, the Azrael. Gon UT took 18 attempts to do it over many months, but the Azrael was more prepared as leading up to it, he did Chapter 1 and 2 no-hits of his own, and after finishing all recruits, he decided to try TRACABARTPEEG with this new fresh experience. After all, this is a champion difficulty run. How much easier can this be now? In July of 2024, the Azrael had done it. He had become the second victor of TRACABARTPEEG, taking only 4 attempts to do so. In one day! To put this large gap in perspective, Gon UT's standalone run lasted nearly 600 days without being contested. And for a while, this is where the hardest base game challenge went. I hope you're not getting bored of this history, but we're almost there, I promise. In June of 2025, Chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune were released. Upon first playthrough, it was clear that the developers have put in a lot of effort and heart to make these. After all, these were so good to look at. I say to look at for a reason. The knight was certainly an unexpected turn of events, making an appearance this early on, and the battle against them was certainly a challenge in and of itself. This was very fun to play casually, but for no-hit runs, this became a nightmare. In fact, Chapter 4 would see its first no-hit run before Chapter 3 did, with Chapter 4 taking less than 1 week, and Chapter 3 taking 2 weeks. So, what happened? Well, it was quite clear that the developers wanted to get this out by the Nintendo Switch 2's release, which was made evident by the changes made later that made Gerson unfair with the new presence of air hits, and the atrocious hitboxes on the Knight's Sword Corridor attack finally getting fixed. It was clear that this was rushed, and because of that, there was very little we could do apart from brute force our way through. Deltarune was no longer the easy game we all knew. It was clear that it was only going to get worse from this point on. And like always, Gon UT would be the first person to... Oh, wait, what? Gon was not the first person to do Chapter 4 all bosses and Chapter 4 all recruits no-hit? Say hello to XTLmaker, another one of the goats of Deltarune. He also has a TRACABARTPEEG run of his own, by the way. Within 2 months of the new chapters being out, every category imaginable was finally conquered. Except for one. Now, we talked about all chapters. What are the odds of someone pulling this off? I'm going to spoil it right now, it's not 1 in 4,000. In fact, it's much likelier than that. But before we do that, I want to talk about the people who are going for this run. Gon UT and Minus. The best run that has ever been performed is a 3-hit run, taking 1 hit in Chapter 2 and 2 hits in Chapter 3 to Rules Chapter 2, Rules Chapter 3 and Weather Duo respectively. Of course, it's still a very hard run, so don't get your hopes up too much. But this, plus the individual runs alone, proves that, in theory, it is humanly possible. It's only a matter of time before someone...
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes! Let's go!
You have got to be kidding. That's right, on January 10th, 2026, Gon UT went on to become the first person to no-hit Deltarune Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 back to back. So, how did he do it? All bosses in Chapter 1, Weird Route in Chapter 2, which does make the run slightly harder, but the time gain was just too large. Normal Route in Chapter 3, and Weird Route in Chapter 4, since you cannot abort it at that point. Now, he did lose some HP in a cutscene that he could have avoided by simply not doing the Weird Route, but because it's scripted damage and the fact that he hadn't been hit by anything he could avoid otherwise, by general challenge run rules, it's still accepted as a no-hit run. And if you've got a problem with it, put it in the complaint box. But, no, seriously, as a Deltarune no-hitter myself, I totally get not counting scripted damage. The game is already really hard enough as it is. Anyway, the odds. Chapter 1 all bosses must be done first to get the Devil's Tail, as it serves to be an important item in Chapter 2. This is a 90% chance, as Jevil can sometimes be a problem, though he rarely ever is. Chapter 2 is done with either aborted or regular Snowgrave, which does have the high success rate of 80%. It is lower because while some of the choke points are cut off, some parts can still be problematic, like Hallway of 87, Birdley 1 and Birdley 2. Chapter 3 has by far the lowest success rate, only being done about 60% of the time. This is because there are multiple choke points spread throughout the entire run, and not a single one of them has any circumstance where you won't be worried. And finally, Chapter 4. Chapter 4's hardest segment has to be the chase at the start, taking a 50% success rate. Gooey and Wingblade are also problematic, while Jackenstein and the Titan can be cheesed a bit with tension items, though they're not exactly free. Chapter 4 has a 70% success rate under perfect conditions based on this analysis. However, we have to adjust for the fact that this is not like trying the same chapter over and over again. Whatever items we use, we don't get back later on. We can't just conjure up items out of thin air or use different save files either. So here's the plan. Get Devil's Tail in Chapter 1, get Tension Bit in Chapter 2, get Tension Max and Tension Gem in Chapter 3, and finally, Tension Gem in Chapter 4. We use tension bits in a darkness fight because you can't get TP through any other means aside from picking up treasure. This is why Jackenstein and the Titan are easy to no-hit under these circumstances, as it's optimal gameplay. But with the need for all 4 tension items in Chapter 4, Mastery of Encounters is required for this category, as well as everything else. I didn't say that this run was going to be easy, didn't I? Because it isn't. Anyway, with all of this, here are the final odds, under perfect circumstances, adjusting for human error and edge cases where RNG is completely impossible to avoid. 1 in 50, or a 2% chance. See? I told you that this was going to be more likely than True Pacifist. But just because it's more likely, doesn't mean that it's just a matter of perseverance, it's also an act of mastery. It might be a stretch to say that 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 will be possible when the future chapters come out, but all we can really do is wait and see. This in itself is a truly legendary run within the Undertale and Deltarune community. With that being said, I have left links to every single no-hit run I've used within this video. Go and watch them, and please, don't forget to watch Gon's All Chapters no-hit run. It's by far the most impressive achievement on this list, and I swear, you will love it. With that being said, this short series comes to a close. We have finally reached the frontier of Undertale and Deltarune challenge running. However, there is one other thing that I want to touch on, but it's by no means related to this or the previous episode. Nothing to do with no-hitting, and it's not even an obscure run either. I might end up making this video in the future, but I will need a lot of help with it. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.